Welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Season 3, The Baker's Dozen Episode 13. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Steve Dennis.
Well, Steve, I'm going to give listeners and viewers a bit of a hint as to who our special guest is this episode, the amazing Kara Goldin, founder and CEO of Hint Infused Water, an amazing CEO subscription-based retailer, best-selling author of Undaunted, Overcoming Doubts and Doubters. And Steve, I have to say, after you and I talked with Kara, I have no doubt that our listeners will love our interview with her.
Oh, I think it's pretty certain. I saw an article about Kara the other day referring to her as the OG of DTC because
Nice.
Hint has actually been around quite a while. So it's great to hear about her journey and some of the takeaways. But and I'm a fan of the product. So even before we had her booked to be on the podcast, so it's a really interesting story.
It's a great personal and professional journey, lots of lessons, and we'll get into that in our great interview. But for now, let's jump into news of the week. So one of our former, earlier this episode, we interviewed CEO Ben Kaufman from Camp, and apparently they've taken over some space at Toys R Us. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, I kind of love the irony of this. Toys R Us is one of those companies that this iconic brand that has basically disappeared, blowing great brand recognition, massive store presence, etc. And the space that Camp is going into in the Garden State Mall in suburban New Jersey was actually space that Toys R Us tried to use for a return. To retail. So smaller space than typical Toys R Us store in a mall, which is not typically where most of the Toys R Us stores were. But that little experiment from Toys R Us, I think there were two of them. The other one I think was in Houston. That did not last. And now Camp, as part of their expansion plan, is moving into that space. And I don't know, it's kind of, it's hard to say from, one store, or Camp's still a pretty small business, but seeing a totally different kind of business model, much more experiential, much more focused, move into a former Toys R Us space. I don't know if whether it's ironic, whether there's a sense of justice or whatever, but it's interesting.
Well, Ben had certainly hinted that there was big things coming for the brand. So
yes.
It sounded like there's a lot of interesting things happen. This could be one of those moving parts.
Yep.
So we'll keep an eye on it. All right. Well, let's talk about Amazon for a second. So you and I both know that returns are a reality of retail, and returns in e-commerce are just generally organically higher than returns to store. But you heard some information about Amazon returns that were pretty interesting. Share.
Yeah, a little birdie told me, and this may be buried somewhere in Amazon's filings, that last year Amazon processed $100 billion in returns.
100
billion. 100 billion. And obviously Amazon is a very large company. But just getting my head around $100 billion of merchandise going back the other way, when you think about how few companies even do $100 billion in sales worldwide. So this is, I guess, not the dirty little secret of e-commerce anymore. Returns have been an issue before e-commerce, but as you mentioned, they're particularly high in e-commerce, and the environmental impact of that, because a lot of stuff basically gets thrown away, the cost of handling it, it's a big, big issue. And I suspected, because of some things we've seen Amazon do in recent years, that was a big focus for them. But when I heard that number, it was hard for me to get my head around it. So they actually have these quite large returns processing centers that they've been building out. So that stuff's got to go someplace.
Go somewhere, right?
Reverse logistics chain. So
wow.
That is
I guess
my remarkable number of the week, 100 billion.
It's remarkable. I guess if we assume Amazon is 400 billion, which they're kind of tracking to, I guess it indexes to about 30% return, which is really high, because when you look at the QVCs of the world, they average about 17 to 18% on a blend of things, right?
Blend, right.
So that's high. That's if it's 33%, that's
Yeah.
high, right?
It it
That's a lot of dough.
Yeah, it's much higher than I would have expected. So
Yeah.
anyway, well, I'm not 100% not sure that number is accurate, but I'm pretty sure
Mm,
it's at least directionally accurate. So yeah,
wow. And so let's talk about they're making some moves in the physical world in your part of the world in Texas. What's going on in San Antonio?
yeah. Well, so we've talked a few times about Amazon's different physical moves. This one's kind of curious. They are taking over about a 4,500 square foot space in the North Star Mall, which is a regional mall on the north side of San Antonio, as I recall. And they have not disclosed what they're doing with it. Seems like it's definitely too small to be an Amazon bookstore, too small, I think, to be an Amazon 4-star store. So the question is, what's it going to be? And some speculation. My speculation is that it's going to be essentially a buy online, pick up, buy online, return to store to kind of connect it to the returns side of things. But we've seen Amazon, and we talked about it last week with what they're doing with their new 4-star store. They're starting to do a lot of things really around the fulfillment side. You can return stuff at Kohl's, all their lockers,
Yep.
some of these things, the returns and pickup centers they put in Whole Foods. So my guess is this is a variation on a theme in a pretty high traffic mall, but we'll see. I imagine in the next month or so, we'll know exactly what they're doing.
Well, maybe they're bringing that European idea of a hair salon to America in Texas. You never know, right? You never know
It
what's
will be a
going
big
on.
hair salon if it's in Texas, but
Um, all right. Well, it is the season, and the season I'm talking about is forecasts for the holiday season. So they're all
yep.
starting to roll out, and Adobe put their forecast out. I was looking at it this week as well. Any numbers jump out at you from the Adobe review of the U.S. forecast for holiday?
Well, I guess there's two different ways to look at it. E-commerce is predicted for the holiday to be only up 10%. And I say only because last year I think it was up 33% or something like that, which is kind of the acceleration around COVID. But in general, I think we've been used to 15, 16, 17, 18%
Yeah.
kind of numbers. So this is a pullback, but we have to keep in mind, it's from a very, very high state. So if you
Yeah.
look across the last 2 or 3 years, it's still, a lot of growth, faster growth in physical retail on a smaller base. So I think a bit of moderation. The other thing that kind of jumped out at me was that their prediction around Cyber Monday or Cyber 5 was growth considerably below that overall 10% number. And I think what's going on there is really the moving forward of holiday purchases, that there won't be so much concentrated on these big event days because people are starting their shopping earlier, which has been a general trend, but particularly with all the supply
Yeah.
chain stuff. So I think that's to
Sure.
be expected. And I frankly think we pay too much attention to individual shopping days anyway. There's always
Mhm.
stuff going on that kind of moves things around, but certainly very strong e-commerce year,
Yeah.
not as strong as last year, but overall, pretty impressive growth across a 2-3 year stack.
Yeah, right on, right on. Well, what's interesting to me is how the Asian market is going towards these holiday festivalizations, right? They got their big
Right.
days, and their big days are getting bigger. And in North America, we're kind of going away from it. Cyber Monday was created, as you
Yeah.
know, to get e-commerce going,
Right.
to
Yeah.
prime the
That seemed to
pump,
work
so to
out
speak.
okay.
I think it worked out okay. When I talk to retailers here, I say, "What do you do with Cyber Monday?" Because it's really a weekend, Black Friday, and
Yeah.
many of them are actually turning their minds to how do we make Monday a bit of a special day.
Hmm.
And some of them are using it like an early, what we have here, Boxing Day. So they're using it as a deal day,
Right.
different and separate than Black Friday. So they're doing some clear out, some overstocks. Now,
Yeah.
very few companies have overstocks these
I was
days,
going to
right?
say
It's the opposite problem.
overstocks may not be too much of an issue this year, but
Not the issue in 2021. Anyway, we'll keep a close eye on that. Now, let's finish off with Crocs. So here's a Croc, one of my Crocs. It's one of my favorites. It has been roughed up severely. It's also one of my dog's favorites. But I have a pair of
yeah.
I have a pair of Yoda inspired, baby Yoda inspired Crocs on the way.
Wow,
Crocs is killing it. Crocs is killing it. They put out some DTC numbers that were just remarkable. So, did you have a chance to take a look at their numbers? And what do you think of a business like Crocs?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say, and I don't want to sound too snobby, wearing my Prada loafers, but I don't get Crocs. I had never got Crocs. I still don't get Crocs. But there's no denying the incredible success they've had in the last few years. In fact, their CEO Andrew Reese is a guy I knew a little bit back when he was at LEK Consulting. Did some work with him. He's a great guy, fabulous leader, and this brand is just on fire. It's become a phenomenon. I think I saw like fur-lined Crocs or something they're coming out with. But yeah, I mean the numbers, I sort of lost track of them, but I think 70+% year over year growth.
Huge.
Great profitability. I think the stock's up like 2.5 times in a year and a half or something like. I mean, every metric is just amazing. Gross margins improved 670%. So, I mean, you talk about a business brand that's firing on all cylinders, both direct to consumer and wholesale. It's really amazing. And they also said in their earnings announcement that they're really not having a heck of a lot of problems with the supply chain, which I can't think of a major retailer or brand that hasn't alluded to the problems. And they're the first one that kind of said, we got it. We're okay.
Yeah, I think it's a super well-run business. You're right. I mean, Crocs were a thing, and then I thought they'd go away, but they just did not go away.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why I like my Crocs, because I put them out on the deck. And when I do my cooking, I never appreciated them as much when when you're standing up cooking for a while, doing my barbecue show,
right?
It's my footwear of choice because they're comfortable.
Right.
Standing up on them for a while, and they're durable. The dog loves them and chews the heck out of them, but you can still put them on. So anyway, they're fun and such a well-run company. So all respect out to the folks at Crocs. And also a shout out to my new podcast, Conversations with Commerce Next. And on a recent episode, we interviewed the COO and CMO of Crocs, coincidentally.
Oh, okay.
So it's a great interview. And that podcast is different than this one. We talk a lot about DTC and e-com. We get into the business side, but then we spend about half the podcast talking about the people. Like we talk about their careers and career advice and career trajectory. So it's different, but we talk to some great people. So I encourage everybody to tune in and join me on that. And I want to take this opportunity to remind our viewers and subscribers to Remarkable Retail to tune in either on our YouTube channel, or of course, if you're watching on YouTube, of course, there is the podcast. There's some bonus content on our YouTube channel. Smash that subscribe button so you don't miss a single minute. Without further ado, let's get to our fantastic interview with Kara from Hint.